Welcome to the English Pod community. I'm your host, Blake, and today I have something special for you. How many times have you found yourself in a conversation, but the words just don't seem to flow as easily as you'd like? Do you sometimes get stuck trying to find the right words, or feel like you're not fully understanding the person speaking? In this episode, we're going to help you break through those barriers. We're diving into real-life stories and conversations to help you improve your listening and writing skills at a C1, C2 level. By the end of today's episode, you'll feel more confident listening to and participating in conversations, no matter how advanced they are. We'll be using real-life examples that will show you exactly how to navigate complex English, so you can be ready for any situation. Now, let me tell you about something that happened to me a few years ago. I was in London for a work project, and I had the chance to sit down with a local team for a meeting. Everything was going great until they started discussing the details of the project, using all kinds of technical terms and advanced vocabulary. I felt a little lost at first, to be honest. But then I remembered one key thing. It's okay to not understand everything right away. The important part is to keep going, listen actively, and ask questions when needed. So, instead of worrying, I focused on understanding the context. I picked out the main ideas, and little by little, I started to feel more comfortable joining in. Eventually, I was able to offer my input and contribute to the meeting. It taught me that understanding comes with practice, especially when it's about real-life situations. So, how does this relate to you? Well, think about times when you found yourself in a conversation that felt overwhelming because of new vocabulary or complex topics. Maybe you're trying to understand a podcast or a news story in English, and the speaker's accent or speed makes it hard to catch every word. Or maybe you're reading an article and the language seems a bit too formal or technical. This is where active listening comes into play. When you listen to real-life examples, like the one I just shared, you'll start to pick up on common patterns and phrases. You'll improve your vocabulary, and before long, you'll feel more confident using these phrases in your own conversations. Let's take another real-life example. A friend of mine, Sarah, recently had to give a presentation at an international conference. She's fluent in English, but when it came time to speak to an audience of industry experts, she was nervous. There were so many specialized terms she had to use, but instead of focusing on the pressure, she used a strategy that really helped. She broke down her presentation into smaller parts, each with a specific focus. That made it easier for her to keep track of everything, and it helped the audience follow along. By practicing this way, she not only improved her own listening, but also made sure that her message was clear and easy to understand for others. Through active listening, you, too, can absorb complex language patterns and get more comfortable with advanced English. It's all about understanding the meaning behind the words, not just focusing on each individual word. When you engage with real-life conversations like these, it will help you build your confidence and make you feel more at ease, even in challenging situations. So today, I encourage you to listen carefully. And remember, you're not alone in this journey. Every new challenge is an opportunity to grow, and with consistent practice, you'll notice your listening and writing skills improve. Whether it's a tricky conversation or a complex topic, you'll start to feel more in control and confident. At the English Pod community, we upload new episodes every day to help you improve your English skills with real-life stories, conversations, and tips. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and leave a comment with your thoughts or any questions you have. We're here to support each other in this learning journey. Ready to dive in? Let's get started. All right, let's dive deeper into how you can improve your skills through everyday conversations and real-life examples. I know it can be a bit intimidating to hear complex English, but the beauty of it is that it's all around us. And with practice, it becomes second nature. Let's take the example of Chris, another friend of mine. Chris works in a global company and often has to participate in virtual meetings with colleagues from different countries. The conversations are often full of idiomatic expressions, business jargon, and different accents. In one particular meeting, Chris found himself struggling to follow the conversation because people were using unfamiliar phrases. But instead of panicking, he focused on two things: context and visual cues. By paying attention to the general theme of the conversation and using the visual cues of his colleagues' facial expressions and body language, Chris was able to follow along much better. This strategy also helped him learn new phrases in context. He began using them in his own conversations, and over time, he became much more comfortable with the language. He realized that understanding these expressions was less about translating the words and more about interpreting the meaning behind them. This approach of focusing on the big picture rather than stressing over every single word is something I encourage you to try. In today's episode, we'll also discuss how to get comfortable with listening at a faster pace. Many of you might be used to slower, more formal English, but real-life conversations, especially at the C1 to C2 level, often happen at a much faster pace. This can make it hard to catch everything, but with practice, you'll be able to understand the flow of the conversation, even when people speak quickly or use informal language. For instance, when I was studying abroad, I had to attend a lot of social events and gatherings where people spoke very fast and used a lot of slang. At first, it felt overwhelming, but instead of getting discouraged, I focused on understanding the key points of what people were saying. I didn't stress too much if I didn't catch every single word or phrase. This allowed me to actively participate in conversations without feeling lost. The more I practiced, the easier it became to keep up with the speed and complexity of natural conversations. A major tip I have for you is to use the pause and replay method when listening to podcasts, interviews, or videos. For example, in this podcast, if you don't catch a word or a phrase, pause the audio and rewind for a few seconds. Try to guess the meaning of the word based on the context, and then replay it to check if you were right. Over time, this will increase your vocabulary and make you more confident in understanding even the most difficult conversations. One last example I want to share is from a conference call I had with a client who was discussing a new project. The conversation was fast-paced, with a lot of technical terms. At first, I wasn't sure if I could keep up, but then I decided to ask them to slow down a bit and explain a few terms. They were happy to help, and by doing this, I not only improved my own understanding of the project, but also showed my willingness to engage in the conversation. Sometimes, it's okay to ask questions or ask people to clarify things. It's all part of the learning process. Remember, confidence comes with practice. The more you expose yourself to real-life English, the better you'll become at understanding and participating in these types of conversations. As you listen to today's episode, I want you to think about the strategies you can apply in your own English learning journey. How can you use these methods in your daily life? How can you break down a challenging conversation and pick up the key points? Whether it's in a meeting, a casual chat, or a podcast like this, understanding English at the C1 C2 level takes time, but I believe that with consistent effort, you'll get there. Let's dive even deeper into how real-life situations can shape our ability to listen and understand at the C1 to C2 level. Many of us have been in situations where we feel like we're missing out on a conversation because it's happening too quickly, or because the people are using terms that we don't fully understand. But trust me, it's all part of the learning process, and the more you expose yourself to these situations, the more comfortable you'll become. Take Maria, for example. Maria is an entrepreneur who started a small online business that became quite successful. She was managing clients from all around the world, and these clients often communicated in English, sometimes using jargon or cultural references that were unfamiliar to her. The first few calls were overwhelming for Maria, especially when her clients used words she wasn't familiar with or when they spoke faster than she was used to. Instead of becoming frustrated, Maria chose to embrace these moments as learning opportunities. She started taking notes during her calls, writing down unfamiliar words, and then looking them up later. This technique of active listening helped her catch words she missed in the moment. Another important thing she did was to repeat what she had understood back to her clients in a way that showed she was engaging with them. For example, if a client said something she wasn't sure about, she would respond with, "Just to clarify, are you asking about insert concept?" This gave her the chance to check her understanding and get confirmation. Maria also found that participating in networking events and talking to other entrepreneurs was another way to practice her listening skills. At these events, the conversations would often shift between topics and use a mixture of formal and informal language. One day, she found herself in a conversation about the latest trends in e-commerce, and someone mentioned a strategy she had never heard of. Instead of zoning out, Maria started asking questions like, "Can you explain what you mean by that? How does it work?" Doing this helped her improve her vocabulary and understanding of the topic in real time. Here's another example from my own experience. When I first moved to an English-speaking country, I was intimidated by the fast-paced, casual conversations. I remember one instance when I was at a cafe and a group of friends at the next table were talking quickly about their plans for the weekend. They were using phrases and slang that I had only read about, and I couldn't keep up. Instead of letting that discourage me, I decided to immerse myself in these kinds of situations more regularly. I would eavesdrop on conversations in public spaces, in a polite way, of course, and pay attention to how people formed sentences or used slang. I also watched a lot of TV shows and movies where characters spoke quickly, just to get used to the rhythm of natural, fast-paced speech. It wasn't easy at first, but after a few weeks, I noticed that I was starting to understand much more. A key takeaway from this experience is that it's normal to struggle with understanding at a higher level of English, but it's important to embrace the challenge. Instead of only listening to slow, scripted content, listen to real-world material, such as interviews, podcasts, or TV shows that reflect natural conversation. This is where you'll really notice a difference in your listening skills over time. Now, let's talk about how you can apply this to your own life. If you're in a work setting, for example, you may have to attend team meetings or client calls. Instead of feeling overwhelmed when the pace picks up, try to use some strategies that can help you keep up. One approach is to ask for clarification. If you don't understand something, for instance, you could say, "I didn't quite catch that. Could you explain it again?" Most people are happy to help, especially if they know you're actively trying to engage. Another strategy is to take the big picture approach. If you understand the main idea of what's being discussed, don't get bogged down by the smaller details. You can always ask follow-up questions to clarify anything that's important later on. This approach can help you keep the flow of conversation going without feeling lost. To make this more practical, let me give you an example from a recent business conference I attended. The speakers were discussing market trends and economic forecasts, which can be full of complex terms and statistics. At first, I found myself getting distracted by all the unfamiliar terms, but then I decided to focus on key phrases and patterns instead of trying to understand every single term. I noticed that the speakers would repeat certain phrases and key points throughout their talks. By listening carefully to those, I was able to get the gist of what they were saying, even if I didn't understand every word. After the conference, I spent time researching the terms I didn't know, and now I can confidently discuss the topics with others. The moral of the story here is that understanding C1, C2 level English is a skill, and like any skill, it takes time and effort to improve. The more you practice, the more your brain will adjust to understanding complex vocabulary and faster speech. So, let's look at how we can apply this in practical terms. One of the best ways to improve your listening skills is by immersing yourself in English as much as possible. This doesn't mean just listening to English at a slow pace, but actually engaging with natural, fast-paced conversations. Listen to podcasts like this one, watch TV shows with fast dialogues, or even try to join language exchange groups where you can practice speaking with native speakers. The key here is to expose yourself to as many real-life scenarios as possible. You'll also want to focus on building your vocabulary over time. In order to understand more complex conversations, it's essential to have a strong foundation of words and phrases. So, when you come across a word you don't know, write it down, look up its meaning, and then try using it in a sentence. Here's something I'd love for you to try. Next time you listen to a podcast or watch a video, pause it every time you don't understand something. Look up the word or expression, then replay it and see if it makes more sense. Do this several times, and you'll notice that your ability to understand these phrases will grow faster than you might expect. One final thought for today: remember, it's all about persistence. The more you practice, the more naturally English will come to you. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, don't be afraid to ask questions, And don't be afraid to expose yourself to the language in different forms. By doing this, you'll start to notice a significant improvement in your understanding, your vocabulary, and your confidence in speaking. As we continue to explore the nuances of listening at the C1 to C2 level, it's important to highlight that the learning journey never really ends. Think of it like a mountain. You're always going up, but every time you reach a new height, there's a new view, new challenges, and new opportunities for growth. If you take the time to reflect on your own journey, you'll realize how much you've learned already. It's not about being perfect in your listening skills right away, but about being consistent in practicing and pushing yourself to understand at a higher level. Let's talk about how real-life situations can speed up your progress. I remember when my friend Sophie, who's originally from France, moved to an English-speaking country for work. Sophie, at the time, had been studying English for years, and her grammar was solid. But when it came to speaking and listening, she struggled because she wasn't used to the pace and natural flow of conversation. Sophie started a new job in an office, and her colleagues were always chatting informally. At first, she felt out of place, as the conversations were fast and peppered with slang. One day during lunch, Sophie overheard a colleague talking about the latest buzzword in the tech industry: disruption. Everyone seemed to understand it, but she had no idea what it meant. Rather than feeling embarrassed, Sophie decided to do something very simple but powerful. She asked about it. Now, this may sound like a small action, but asking for clarification is one of the best tools for developing listening skills, especially at an advanced level. It's not about waiting for someone to slow down for you, it's about being brave enough to participate. Sophie asked her colleague, "Hey, can you explain what disruption means in this context?" Her colleague took a moment and explained the term in detail, giving her a clearer understanding of the word. By using this technique over and over again, Sophie quickly began to recognize that this approach didn't just help with vocabulary, it also helped with sentence structure, intonation, and understanding the underlying message behind the words. Sophie learned that every conversation, every question, every interaction was an opportunity for her to strengthen her listening skills. In addition to that, Sophie started to spend time listening to podcasts in English. This was important because, in many ways, podcasts replicate natural conversations. When you listen to podcasts at an advanced level, you're exposed to a wide range of accents, dialects, and topics, all of which help expand your language capacity. Sophie started with podcasts that discussed topics she was interested in, such as the tech industry, and gradually began to listen to content that was more diverse in its subject matter. The more she listened, the more she picked up new vocabulary, colloquialisms, and cultural references that made her conversations at work and in social settings flow more smoothly. But what's interesting is that Sophie didn't just listen passively. She actively engaged with what she was listening to. After hearing a podcast episode, she would take notes, write down new words, and summarize the content in her own words. This practice helped her solidify the language and made her feel more confident about using what she learned in real life. As a result, her listening and speaking abilities improved rapidly. Listening isn't just about hearing. It's about actively processing what you hear and turning it into something useful. A similar strategy can be used by anyone trying to improve their listening skills. Let's take Chris, a colleague of mine, who wanted to work on his listening skills for professional purposes. Chris worked in marketing and frequently needed to understand different perspectives on consumer behavior, which often involved listening to research presentations. In the beginning, Chris felt overwhelmed by the jargon and technical language used in the presentations, but he decided to take charge of his learning. What Chris did was listen to TED Talks on similar topics during his free time. TED Talks are often delivered by professionals and experts, and they tackle complex topics in a clear, engaging, and accessible way. After listening to a TED Talk, Chris would write a quick summary of the ideas he understood, and then he'd look up any terms or phrases he didn't know. By pairing listening with active note-taking and research, Chris was able to improve his ability to process information quickly and effectively. Over time, he found himself more confident and engaged during marketing meetings at work. This shows us the power of real-world practice. Whether it's in your career or your personal life, the more you put yourself in situations that require listening to fast-paced or complex English, the more you'll develop your ability to understand and respond naturally. And the best part, these situations don't have to be formal. In fact, informal settings are often where we can learn the most. Let's take a moment to talk about socializing, as it's one of the most rewarding ways to improve your listening skills. A few months ago, I met a friend named Mark who had recently moved from Spain to the United States. Mark was excited to make new friends, but he struggled with understanding fast, casual conversations in English, especially at social gatherings like parties or dinners. He didn't always know what to say or how to react when people made jokes or references to pop culture. What Mark did next is something I recommend to anyone at the C1, C2 level. He started to immerse himself in real-life social scenarios. Instead of avoiding these situations because he felt overwhelmed, he put himself in them on purpose. He started going to more meetups, attending events where English was spoken, and engaging in conversations with new people. Initially, it wasn't easy. People spoke quickly, and sometimes the conversations were about topics he wasn't familiar with. But Mark persisted, and over time, he started picking up new phrases, cultural references, and ways of expressing himself in English. One of the most interesting things Mark did was to participate in open mic storytelling events. These events are a great opportunity for anyone trying to improve their English listening and speaking skills. Mark went to several of these events, listening to people tell stories from their own lives. Each story gave him a glimpse into how native speakers use language in different contexts. It also taught him how tone, emphasis, and context can change the meaning of words. After a few months, Mark started telling his own stories at these events. This not only helped his speaking skills, but it also gave him a better understanding of the cultural nuances behind the language. What's great about these real-life scenarios is that they reflect the kind of communication you'll encounter in your daily life, whether it's at work, at social events, or even in casual conversations with friends. Language is dynamic, and learning it through active listening is one of the best ways to improve your ability to respond in real time. But don't just take my word for it. Take a look at Sarah, a student of mine who has been working on her advanced listening skills for a while. Sarah is an engineer, and at work, she often has to listen to presentations and technical discussions in English. At first, Sarah struggled because the vocabulary was specific to her field and quite complex. However, instead of feeling discouraged, she decided to tackle the issue head-on by combining listening practice with targeted learning. Sarah began listening to podcasts that focused on engineering and technology topics, and every time she heard a word she didn't know, she paused the podcast, wrote it down, and looked it up. She did this consistently for a month, and before long, her technical vocabulary expanded significantly. But here's the kicker. Sarah didn't just stop there. She started listening to podcasts from different fields, from marketing to science, to get a more rounded understanding of advanced English usage. By combining targeted learning with general exposure, Sarah was able to increase her comprehension across different domains. The key takeaway here is that by consistently exposing yourself to a variety of subjects and contexts, you'll build the ability to understand complex topics in any situation. I hope today's episode has inspired you to take your English listening skills to the next level. Whether it's asking questions in conversations, exposing yourself to new content, or stepping outside your comfort zone in real-life situations, remember that consistent practice is key. You don't have to be perfect, but with each small step, you'll get closer to mastering your listening skills. If you enjoyed today's story and want to keep improving, don't forget to subscribe to the English Pod community. We upload new content every day, filled with real-life stories, tips, and strategies to help you enhance your conversational English. Also, feel free to like, comment, and share. Your feedback helps us create even better content for you. Keep listening, keep practicing, and I'll see you in the next episode.